Have you ever looked around your home in the quiet of the morning, coffee in hand, and wondered what life is really supposed to feel like now? Maybe the children are grown. Maybe the house is quieter than it used to be. Maybe your body has changed, your routines have changed, and even your sense of purpose has shifted in ways you never expected. And somewhere deep in your heart, you may have asked a question that many women are almost afraid to say out loud. As I grow older, what can I truly rely on? For many years, a lot of us were taught to rely on being needed. We relied on raising families, caring for husbands, helping friends, keeping the household going, showing up for church, cooking meals, remembering birthdays, solving problems, and putting everyone else first. We were praised for being dependable, for being strong, for holding everything together. But there comes a season in life when God gently begins to reveal something new. He shows us that old age is not meant to be a season of fear, shrinking, or simply waiting. It can be a season of wisdom, peace, dignity, and joy. And in that season, there are certain things we must learn to stand on with confidence. Today, I want to talk with you about 3 things God reveals you can rely on in old age. Not trends. Not empty promises. Not the pressure to stay forever young. But real, lasting supports that can help you live with freedom and peace. These are financial independence, meaningful friendships and community, and personal joy and passions. And I want to begin with the one that many women were never encouraged to build for themselves, even though it can make such a powerful difference in later life. Financial independence may not sound like a spiritual subject at first, but it truly is tied to peace. There is something deeply comforting about knowing you can pay your own bills, make your own decisions, and meet your own basic needs without feeling like a burden. That does not mean you need to be wealthy. It does not mean you need a perfect retirement account or a life without any financial concern. It means having enough control, enough awareness, and enough preparation to live with dignity and make choices from a place of wisdom instead of panic. Many women over 60 did not grow up being taught to focus on this. Some were raised to believe that their husband would manage the money. Others spent so many years giving to children and family that they never stopped to ask whether they themselves were secure. Some went through divorce, widowhood, illness, or caregiving years that drained savings and energy. So if you are listening to this and thinking, I wish I had started sooner, please do not let shame enter the room. Shame never helps us move forward. God does not reveal truth to condemn us. He reveals truth to free us. Financial independence begins with honesty. It starts when you sit down and gently look at your life as it is, not as you wish it had been. What income do you have each month? What expenses are fixed? What subscriptions, habits, or hidden little drains are pulling money away? What support systems are available to you? What can be simplified? What needs attention? Even asking those questions is a step toward strength. I think of a woman in her late 60s who spent most of her adult life taking care of everyone else. She knew how to stretch a casserole, sew a hem, comfort a worried child, and keep a home running through hard times. But after her husband passed, she discovered she had no real understanding of the household finances. Bills felt overwhelming. Paperwork made her anxious. She would stack unopened envelopes on the kitchen counter because just seeing them made her heart race. For a while, she assumed her children would simply take over everything. But something in her spirit pushed back against that. Not because she didn't love them, but because she wanted peace, clarity, and self-respect. So she started slowly. One folder. One bank statement. One phone call. One question at a time. And over the course of a year, she transformed from feeling helpless into feeling capable. She was not suddenly rich. But she was steady. She knew what she had, what she owed, and what she could do. And with that knowledge came peace. That kind of peace matters more than people realize. When you have even a basic level of financial independence, you are better able to say yes to what blesses you and no to what drains you. You are less likely to stay stuck in unhealthy situations because of fear. You are less likely to feel resentful toward your children or ashamed of your needs. You are more able to make practical choices that support your health, your housing, and your future. If this is an area where you feel uncertain, begin with small faithful steps. Write everything down. Create a simple monthly budget, even if you have never done one before. If paperwork overwhelms you, ask a trusted person to sit with you while you organize it, but stay involved. Learn where your money goes. Review your insurance. Understand your benefits. If there is debt, face it with courage and a plan instead of dread. If you need guidance, look for help from a trustworthy financial counselor, a local senior resource center, or someone in your church community who is both wise and honorable. The goal is not perfection. The goal is peace through clarity. And there is another side to this that matters just as much. Financial independence is not only about numbers. It is also about permission. It is about allowing yourself to believe that your well-being matters. So many women will spend freely on a grandchild, a holiday meal, or a gift for someone else, then hesitate to buy supportive shoes, schedule an important appointment, or replace a worn-out mattress. But caring for yourself wisely is not selfish. It is stewardship. God did not create you to disappear in the background of everybody else's life. Sometimes financial independence also means adjusting expectations. It may mean downsizing a house that has become too costly or too lonely to manage. It may mean choosing simplicity over appearance. It may mean letting go of old pride and embracing a new kind of freedom. There is no shame in living modestly if modesty brings peace. In fact, many women discover that the less they are trying to maintain for the sake of appearances, the more room they have for rest, joy, and meaningful living. And once that ground begins to feel more stable, something beautiful can happen inside a woman's heart. She no longer feels like she is merely hoping someone will rescue her. She begins to remember that, with God's help, she can still build, choose, prepare, and stand. Even now. Even in this season. Especially in this season. That kind of confidence opens the door to the second thing God reveals you can rely on in old age, and that is meaningful friendships and community. This is such an important truth, because one of the greatest myths many women carry into later life is that if they have family, that should be enough. Family is precious, yes. Children and grandchildren are blessings, yes. But they cannot be your only emotional world. They were never meant to carry the full weight of your companionship, your conversation, your laughter, your growth, and your sense of belonging. As women age, loneliness can become very quiet. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like eating every meal alone. Sometimes it looks like going days without a heartfelt conversation. Sometimes it looks like being surrounded by people who love you, but are too busy to really know how you are doing. Sometimes it looks like smiling in public and feeling invisible in private. And for many women, loneliness deepens because they hesitate to reach out. They don't want to intrude. They don't want to seem needy. They don't want to start over socially at this age. So they stay home and the world becomes smaller. But God did not design you for isolation. Even if you treasure peace and independence, your heart still needs connection. Not constant noise. Not draining relationships. But true, meaningful community. The kind where you can be known, encouraged, and uplifted. The kind where you can laugh until your eyes water, share burdens without embarrassment, pray with someone who understands, or simply sit across from a friend who sees you clearly. Meaningful friendship in old age may look different than it did at 30 or 40. You may not have the energy for large circles or shallow social obligations. You may be much more selective now, and honestly, that can be a gift. At this stage of life, many women are less interested in impressing people and more interested in sincerity. They want honesty, kindness, reliability, a sense of mutual care. They want friendships that nourish rather than exhaust. And if you are sitting there thinking, that sounds lovely, but where do I even begin? The answer is often simpler than we make it. Start where life already touches your heart. A church group, a Bible study, a walking club, a volunteer program, a choir, a class at the community center, a small group for widows, caregivers, or grandmothers. Friendship rarely drops out of the sky. It usually begins through shared presence, repeated contact, and one small act of openness. You do not have to become the most outgoing person in the room. You do not have to charm everybody. You simply have to become willing. Willing to go. Willing to speak. Willing to invite. Willing to say, "Would you like to have coffee sometime?" Willing to attend again even if the first time felt awkward. Real friendship often grows quietly, one conversation at a time, one shared experience at a time, one kind gesture at a time. There is such strength in knowing that as you grow older, you are not walking alone. There are people who can check on you, pray for you, laugh with you, and remind you who you are. There are people who can celebrate your good days and sit beside you in the hard ones. And there is something deeply healing about belonging to a community where your age is not treated like a problem to solve, but as a source of wisdom, beauty, and grace. When a woman begins to feel supported not only by practical stability, but by genuine connection, something inside her softens and strengthens at the same time. She realizes her life is still fruitful. Her presence still matters. Her story is still unfolding. And from that place, another beautiful truth begins to rise. Because once a woman begins to feel steady in her life and connected to others around her, she often starts to rediscover something that may have been quiet for many years. Something that had been waiting patiently beneath responsibilities, beneath busy schedules, beneath the endless needs of everyone else. That something is personal joy. For many women over 60, joy has been postponed for decades. Not intentionally, of course. Life simply asked for so much. There were children to raise, meals to cook, appointments to manage, houses to clean, parents to care for, and problems to solve. Somewhere along the way, passions were set aside. Hobbies were delayed. Dreams were gently folded up and placed on a shelf with the quiet promise of maybe someday. But what if someday has arrived? One of the most surprising gifts of growing older is time. Not always unlimited time, of course, but a different kind of time. Time that is no longer shaped entirely by other people's schedules. Time that can slowly begin to belong to you again. And God, in His gentle wisdom, often uses this season to remind women that their hearts still matter. Your curiosity still matters. Your creativity still matters. The things that make your spirit come alive still matter. Think about the things you once loved before life became so busy. Maybe you used to enjoy painting, writing, gardening, singing, sewing, baking, walking through nature, studying scripture deeply, learning history, playing an instrument, or simply sitting quietly with a good book and a cup of tea. Maybe there was something you always wanted to learn, but never had the chance. Maybe there was something you used to do when you were younger that made you feel peaceful and alive. Many women reach their 60s or 70s and quietly assume that the season for those things has passed. They tell themselves that hobbies are for younger people, or that learning new skills is too difficult now, or that it's too late to begin again. But that belief simply isn't true. In fact, this season may be one of the most meaningful times to rediscover joy. There is a story I often think about when I talk with women about this stage of life. A woman named Margaret, who had spent nearly 40 years raising her family and working part-time jobs, suddenly found herself with quiet afternoons after retirement. For the first few months, she didn't quite know what to do with herself. She cleaned the house more than necessary. She watched television longer than she enjoyed. She felt restless, but she couldn't quite explain why. One afternoon, she was sorting through an old drawer and found a small notebook filled with sketches. Flowers, trees, birds, simple landscapes. She had drawn them when she was in her 20s. She sat at the kitchen table flipping through those pages for nearly an hour. Something stirred inside her. The next day, she bought a simple sketch pad and a few pencils. Nothing fancy. Just enough to begin. At first, she felt awkward. Her hands felt stiff. She worried the drawings wouldn't be good. But that didn't matter. She wasn't drawing to impress anyone. She was drawing because it brought her peace. Over time, she started attending a small art group at the community center. Once a week, they gathered around a large table with their paints and pencils. Some of them were experienced artists. Others had never held a brush before. But every single one of them shared something in common. They were discovering that creativity does not disappear with age. In fact, many of them said something remarkable. They felt more free now than they ever had when they were younger. They were no longer trying to prove anything. They were simply enjoying the process. This is the kind of personal joy that becomes incredibly important in later life. Not because it fills every hour, but because it nourishes the soul. It reminds you that your life is still unfolding. That you are still capable of learning, growing, and experiencing beauty. Joy does not have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes joy looks like tending a small garden and watching the tomatoes ripen. Sometimes joy looks like practicing a hymn on the piano. Sometimes joy looks like knitting a blanket for a new grandchild. Sometimes joy looks like walking along a quiet path while talking to God. Sometimes joy looks like volunteering somewhere your kindness can shine. These small passions become anchors for the heart. They give structure to the days. They provide something to look forward to in the morning. And something else happens when a woman reconnects with her passions. Her confidence returns. Not the loud confidence of youth, but a quieter kind. A grounded kind. The kind that says, my life still has meaning. My days still have purpose. Many women discover that when they begin doing something they love again, it also opens doors to new friendships and new experiences. A woman who joins a book club may find deep conversations she didn't know she needed. A woman who volunteers at a food pantry may discover a new circle of kind-hearted friends. A woman who joins a church choir may feel the joy of music filling her heart again. A woman who begins writing her memories may realize that a life story holds wisdom that others need to hear. Personal joy and passions do something remarkable in old age. They remind you that you are not simply passing time. You are still creating a life. And the beautiful truth is that these passions do not have to be grand achievements. They do not have to lead to recognition or applause. Their purpose is far simpler. They bring life to your spirit. They make ordinary days feel meaningful. They create moments of gratitude. And often, they become quiet ways of sharing light with others. Because when a woman is doing something she loves, it shows. Her face softens. Her laughter becomes easier. Her eyes brighten. And people around her can feel that warmth. This is why personal joy is not selfish. It is a gift that spreads outward. When your spirit is nourished, you have more kindness to offer. More patience, more wisdom, more encouragement. And suddenly the life you are living becomes richer, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Financial independence gives you stability. Friendships and community give you connection. But personal joy gives you life. When these three things begin to work together, something truly beautiful happens. A woman stops feeling like she is slowly fading into the background of the world. Instead, she realizes she is entering a new chapter filled with quiet strength and freedom. She is no longer living only for responsibilities. She is living with intention. She is choosing how her days will unfold. And that kind of life can be deeply peaceful. There is something sacred about waking up in the morning knowing that your life still belongs to you. That your choices matter. That your heart still has room to grow. Many women discover that their later years become some of the most meaningful years they have ever lived. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because they begin living it with clarity. They understand what truly matters. They invest their time wisely. They nurture their relationships carefully. They protect their peace. They make room for joy. And when you look at women who have learned to live this way, you often notice something wonderful. They carry a calm kind of happiness. Not the loud excitement of youth, but something deeper. Something steady. Something graceful. It's the quiet confidence of a woman who knows she can rely on the foundations God has placed in her life. Financial wisdom, meaningful friendships, and the courage to keep her heart alive through passion and joy. And when those foundations are strong, the years ahead stop feeling uncertain. They begin to feel like a gift waiting to be opened. Because growing older is not about losing life. It's about learning how to live it in a new and beautiful way. And the more you allow yourself to step into that truth, the more you begin to see that this season of life may hold some of the most peaceful, fulfilling, and meaningful days you have ever known. And that realization leads naturally into something even deeper. Because when a woman begins to build her life on those three steady foundations, financial independence, meaningful friendships and community, and personal joy, something very powerful begins to take shape inside her. It's not loud, and it's not something that happens overnight. But little by little, day by day, a quiet confidence starts to grow. And that confidence changes the way she sees the future. For many women, aging can feel like walking into unfamiliar territory. The world moves faster than it used to. Technology changes. Neighborhoods change. Even family roles change. Sometimes it can feel as though everything around you is shifting. But when you know what you can rely on, those changes don't feel as frightening. Instead of asking, "What will happen to me?" you begin asking a much more hopeful question: "What will I choose to do with the years I still have?" That shift in perspective is powerful. It's the moment when life stops feeling like something that is slowly slipping away and starts feeling like something that is still unfolding. And that is one of the most beautiful truths God reveals in later life. He shows us that purpose does not disappear with age. In fact, purpose often becomes clearer. When you're younger, life can feel rushed and scattered. You're trying to build a career, raise children, manage responsibilities, and keep everything moving forward. There's very little quiet space to step back and reflect. But later in life, something remarkable happens. You begin to see the bigger picture. You understand which things truly mattered and which things didn't. You realize that kindness mattered more than perfection, that relationships mattered more than appearances, that faith mattered more than achievements. And with that understanding comes a different kind of purpose. Many women discover that their later years become a time of quiet influence. Not the kind of influence that seeks attention or recognition, but the kind that gently shapes the lives of others. Think about the role you may already play in someone's life. You may be the grandmother whose wisdom guides younger generations. You may be the friend who listens patiently when someone is hurting. You may be the woman at church who always remembers to pray for others. You may be the volunteer who shows up week after week with kindness and dedication. These things may seem small in the moment, but they carry enormous meaning. The truth is, the world desperately needs the presence of wise, steady, compassionate women. And when a woman lives with the kind of balance we've been talking about, stable in her independence, connected in her friendships, and joyful in her passions, she naturally becomes a source of light for others. Not because she is trying to be perfect, but because she is living honestly and peacefully. There's a quiet beauty in that. And often, it's during this stage of life that women begin to understand something they may have missed earlier. Happiness does not come from trying to control everything. It comes from learning to care for what you can influence and releasing the rest into God's hands. For example, many women carry deep worries about their children or grandchildren. That love never disappears. A mother's heart is always connected to the people she has nurtured. But one of the most freeing realizations in later life is understanding that your role changes. You are no longer responsible for solving every problem. You are no longer required to carry every burden. Instead, you become a source of guidance, encouragement, and prayer. You offer wisdom when it's welcomed. You support with love. But you also allow others to walk their own paths. This shift can bring tremendous peace, because it allows you to focus your energy on living fully rather than worrying constantly. It creates room in your life for the things that nourish your spirit. And that nourishment is essential. Your daily routine, for example, becomes an important part of maintaining that balance. Many women find comfort in simple rhythms. Perhaps the day begins with a quiet moment of prayer or reflection. A cup of coffee by the window while the world slowly wakes up. A short walk that brings fresh air and movement to the body. A phone call with a friend. A few hours spent volunteering or pursuing a favorite hobby. Time with family when it feels joyful and relaxed. Evenings that include music, reading, or peaceful conversation. These routines are not glamorous, but they are deeply meaningful. They give shape to your days. They remind you that life is not measured only by big milestones, but by the quiet moments in between. And those moments add up to something very precious. A life that feels full. One of the most encouraging things about this stage of life is that it allows you to let go of certain pressures that once felt overwhelming. You no longer have to impress everyone. You no longer have to chase unrealistic expectations. You no longer have to pretend to be someone you are not. Instead, you can live with authenticity. You can choose what truly matters to you. You can protect your peace. You can speak with honesty and kindness. You can surround yourself with people who appreciate the person you have become. And when you live that way, something wonderful begins to happen. Your life becomes an example. You may not even realize it, but younger women often watch and learn from the older women around them. They observe how you handle challenges. They notice the calm in your voice. They see the balance between independence and connection. They hear the wisdom in your stories. And through those quiet observations, they gain courage for their own futures. Your life becomes a testimony. Not just of survival, but of growth. Not just of aging, but of living well. And that is why the message we've shared today is so important. God reveals 3 things you can rely on in old age, not to limit you, but to strengthen you. Financial independence allows you to stand with dignity and make wise decisions. Meaningful friendships and community remind you that you are never meant to walk this journey alone. Personal joy and passions keep your heart alive and your spirit engaged with life. Together, these three foundations create a life that feels stable, connected, and joyful. They allow you to face the years ahead with confidence instead of fear. And they remind you that your story is still unfolding. Before we finish, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these three areas speaks most strongly to your life right now? Are you working toward greater financial peace? Have you found a circle of friends who truly support you? Or have you recently rediscovered a passion that brings joy to your days? Your experiences matter, and sharing them may encourage someone else who is listening today. If this message spoke to your heart, please take a moment to like the video. It helps this message reach more women who may need encouragement in this stage of life. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel Elderly Faith Journey for more conversations like this, messages about faith, wisdom, and living well in the years God has given us. Growing older is not the end of the story. It's simply another chapter. A chapter filled with grace, strength, friendship, and purpose. And no matter what season you are walking through today, remember this. It is never too late to build a life that feels peaceful, meaningful, and joyful. Here's to living with faith, wisdom, and courage at every age.